And all of these players are going to be stat lines from the 2022-23 season, and all of the players are new to the Pittsburgh Penguins this offseason. So guys that came in the last couple of months, we're going to talk about their stat lines from 2022-23. I'll give the stat line. Horwat's going to try to guess it. If you're at home, you can play along. But let's get this started with the first stat line from, again, the 2022-23 season, which was not last year, it was the year prior. 81 games played for this player, 18 goals, 54 points, and he has played for two of the Penguins' biggest rivals in his career. Can you name that stat line, Horwat?
That sounds like Kevin Hayes' last year in Philly.
It is.
I didn't realize he played 81 games, though. But
he did. Yeah, 81 games, 54 points, and 18 goals. It's a good stat line. Now, he had a bad year in St. Louis, which is why the Blues were willing to utilize a second-round pick to offload his contract. Not only that, then, of course, the Penguins switched some things around, got a second later, got an extra third, whatever. But the Blues didn't want him because he wasn't a fit in St. Louis. If he's a fit in Pittsburgh like he was in Philly, 54 points is a good number right there.
Good puck mover. That's a good depth center, puck moving player. Those are good numbers for that sort of style. I can't even remember the name now, but that's what he should bring to the Penguins exactly, is that sort of playmaking ability that whether he's playing with Puustinen or McGroarty, depending on how things file out. There's a good chance, maybe even who was it? That was supposed to be Islander, whose name Beauvillier maybe be skating up there because the depth is weird in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of it, but also not a lot of it at the same time.
Yeah.
We'll see how it filters out, but it'll be looking out for Kevin Hayes to have another season like that, to have another playmaking year where he's putting up good numbers in the assist category and scoring every so often whenever he can. I forget. I know they probably haven't labeled this yet. I forget if he's a penalty killer, though.
Yes. He wasn't last year in St. Louis, but he has in his career killed penalties.
Okay. Because also figuring out the organization of the power play will be extremely interesting in Pittsburgh this year.
So you're 1 for 1, and you got that one with relative ease. So let's see if you can keep going, and I'll keep giving you the first hint. We do have a secondary hint if you need it. Let's go to the second player here. 72 games played in the 2022-23 season. He scored 14 goals, 35 points, and Pittsburgh will be his third organization in the NHL.
What were the numbers again?
72 games played, 14 goals, 35 points.
Third organization. I was going to say Beauvillier, but I feel like Beauvillier has played for 3 in the last year.
I think he has, yeah. He was traded twice last year, so yeah, he played for 3 teams last season.
Yeah. And I'm also forgetting who the Penguins got. The goals numbers seem high, but could it have been Matt Grzelcyk?
It is not Matt Grzelcyk.
Okay.
It is Cody Glass. Cody Glass for the Nashville Predators had 14 goals, 35 points 2 seasons ago. He comes into Pittsburgh. This is a player that I don't think a lot of people can really nail down where he's going to be early in camp. I mean, he plays center. He can play the wing, but where do the Penguins have him? I mean, there's a logjam at center with we already mentioned Kevin Hayes. Lars Eller is down there as well. Blake Lizotte can play center. Sam Poulin can play center. Now Cody Glass is added into that as well. So there's a lot of question marks about where Cody Glass is going to fit. But 35 points a couple of years ago is not a horrible stat line for a player that has been considered a bust among certain fan bases. But looking for a fresh start in Pittsburgh, even if he kind of gets those numbers again, I think it's a solid floor to have. But again, as of right now, it's not his floor. It's closer to his ceiling.
But he's also only 25 still. I think that's the fun part of Cody Glass here, is that you've said those numbers where he had 35 points in 72 games. He was 23 in his first full season in Nashville. Again, I don't know exactly what happened whenever he only played 8 games in 21-22. Without looking into it, I always assume injury, but that was his first real long season in the NHL. Career highs in goals, points, assists, games played, even plus minus for that matter. So that's his year to focus on and something to build off of from that. Don't look too much into last season in your 41 games and 13 points. For Cody Glass, that'll have to be his baseline and his target of, let's say playing more than 72 games and then obviously crushing that 35-point number one way or another. And because he's only 25, there's still plenty of room for, I don't want to say figuring out what kind of player you are, but he's got a little more time to sort of earn his positioning and learn and excel and add to his skill set, which the Penguins needed to get younger, and that's one way to adding Cody Glass was one way of doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And it was knee injuries that held Cody Glass out. So obviously you're hoping that he stays healthy. 2 years ago, it's a lot of games played, 72. So it seems like he got over that last year, of course, in and out of the lineup. So we'll see what he's able to do in his first season in Pittsburgh. All right. So you're 1-2, or you're 1-4-2, I should say. Let's see if you can get a winning record here. Let's see if you can hit 2 for 3 on the day. This player played 82 games played in the 2022-23 season, 18 goals, 40 points. And I'll say this player could be anything from a top liner to a waiver option this season for the Penguins.
The waiver option threw me off. You said 40 points? Is this one Anthony Beauvillier?
This is Anthony Beauvillier. Yeah. If you would have asked for the second hint, which you try not to do, and I appreciate that, even though I do prepare second hints for you. The second hint would have given it away. He's been traded 3 times in the past 2 seasons.
We just discussed it, so yes.
We just discussed it. But Beauvillier, 40 points that season. He had split it with the Islanders and the Canucks. And funny story, 9 goals, 20 points for both teams in that season.
Clean. Those are the stat lines you love seeing.
Yes, 100%. Keep it easy. Keep it simple. Was he better before or after the trade? He was the same.
Yeah, the exact same. Before the season was even over, there was everyone saying or discussing the idea of the Penguins targeting Anthony Beauvillier. And I do think it's interesting that you're right. He could kind of play on the top line, but could also be flown through waivers at any moment. So, he'll have a fascinating season regardless of what happens. He'll have a fascinating start with the Penguins because, like I also just said, like you mentioned, he could be on the first line, he could be on the waivers. I pinned him next to Kevin Hayes 20 seconds ago too. Yeah, there's all kind of range this guy can take. That I get in terms of like him and Matt Grzelcyk. I get where fans are coming from and saying that these guys are not as good, maybe not right for the Penguins. Let's give it a shot. Let's see some game action before we jump to those conclusions. And for him specifically, I'm real curious to see what he can do with the Penguins in this new system because, I said most of last year, any New York Islander, whether you like it or not, fits Mike Sullivan's system. Yeah. You got to play defense.
At a base level, yes.
Yeah. You got to play defense, and that's something he'll be able to do. We'll see how the offense turns out from there.
Now, here's the reason I chose these 3 players to do today. Hayes, Glass, and Beauvillier all had pretty rough seasons last year, hence the reason they were cheap enough that the Penguins went out and got them for peanuts. But the year prior to that, they all had pretty good seasons. 40 points for Beauvillier, 35 points for Glass, 54 points for Kevin Hayes. You know what all that has in common? It is more points than any bottom 6 scorer for the Penguins has scored the past 2 seasons. Last year, if you want to count Drew O'Connor, I'll give it to you, but he only had 33 points, and most of those were because he played with Sidney Crosby, and that's where he got the bulk majority of his points. So taking out Drew O'Connor, the 3 leading bottom 6 scorers last season were Lars Eller, 31, Valtteri Puustinen, 20, and Jeff Carter with 15. 2022-23, Jeff Carter with 29, Danton Heinen with 22, and Kasperi Kapanen with 20. So these aren't the best players the Penguins brought in. I understand that, and they're coming off of years that aren't good. But they are not far removed from a 54-point season for Kevin Hayes, a 35-point season for Cody Glass, and a 40-point season for Anthony Beauvillier. So, if anything, this is a reason to have some encouragement for the Penguins' bottom 6 going into this season.
No kidding. Just hearing those names and who led the bottom 6 in scoring.
Carter's on both lists. Carter is on both lists right now.
And not necessarily last season, but the season before, the 22-23 season, was notably a poor year for him. He did better last year because he was in a different role. I think everyone sort of expected less, and he delivered more. Again, it wasn't phenomenal. It wasn't stand out. But everyone sort of knew this is probably his last year. He's playing fourth line right wing. He's not going to bring a bunch to the table. And then he ended up bringing more to the table than was expected. And yet Jeff Carter was on that list the year before. And like I said, a notably poor year. Also, Danton Heinen and who am I forgetting? Valtteri Puustinen. I mean, those guys got points, but they also never struck anyone as goal scorers. I mean, Puustinen should and likely will. But
not last year,
all those numbers are assists. Most of those numbers are assists. He had what, 3 goals? If I'm not mistaken.
Puustinen had 5 goals, 15 assists, and Carter, it's funny, was the inverse. He had 11 goals, 4 assists last year.
That's right, he did. Wild. But like Puustinen and Heinen, just because we forget that Heinen almost fell off the face of the earth, by the way. He was like healthy scratched. He's still sitting in the top 3 comfortably of that bottom 6. And I mean, Kasperi Kapanen was also claimed off of waivers that year and was still top 3 of this list.
Yeah.
I mean, Lars Eller had a good year. That'll be nice to have back if he sticks around and is able to do that again, despite being one of the sneaky old guys on this team. Yeah, already major steps in the right direction for this Penguins bottom 6 because, like I said, you're reading those names off. I'm sitting here laughing. That is a laughable bottom 6 these last 2 seasons. Scoring-wise. Defense-wise, I think they were okay. I forget, kind of, mostly.
They were fine defensively, but at the same time, whenever you're a team that needs more goal scoring and your defense, your actual defense is not good and your goaltending is not good, a good defensive bottom 6 that doesn't score isn't really helping all that much. It's great that they didn't, look horrible in the defensive zone, but at the same time, the results stand for themselves and they speak for themselves. They missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons. So the reason I bring this up is there is reason for encouragement in the Penguins bottom 6. Those names that we brought up, Beauvillier, Glass, Hayes, they can score points. They've proven they can score points as recently as 2 seasons ago. You bring in some young guys like Blake Lizotte, that's going to be pretty exciting. You bring in a young guy like Rutger McGroarty, that's going to be exciting. Maybe you get the opportunity to have Drew O'Connor in that bottom 6 a little bit more. Maybe Valtteri Puustinen takes a step this season. There is reason to believe that the ceiling is higher and the floor is higher for the Penguins bottom 6 when it comes to scoring this year. And that's just what we wanted to do.